Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathan Segal of the Legends of Online Marketing. With me today is Heather Havenwood. Heather Havenwood refers to herself as the sexy boss, and she is the mentor, coach, and marketing entrepreneur that helps women worldwide navigate growth and the development of the business and entrepreneurial life. Ms. Havenwood's personal life mission is to empower 100 million women in their journey of owning their talent, self-confidence, and self-reliance through entrepreneurship education. Havenwood is the embodiment of the new women of a new era, being sexy, being entrepreneurial, being self-confident, being a leader, being a CEO, being a voice, being a fitness figure competitor, and just being a woman in every sense of the word. She is ready to help coach you to your new path towards total sexy boss lifestyle. Sorry, let me phrase that. She is ready to help coach you to your new path towards total sexy boss lifestyle freedom. Are you ready? Acquire the essential knowledge to become a successful entrepreneur with Heather Havenwood.
Woo!
Yeah, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited about it. And I'm calling from Austin, Texas. And where are you in the world? You told me before. You're not in the United States.
I did. I'm prior to this, I was actually in a place called Ensenada, which is 20 kilometers south of me. And then about 2 weeks ago, some friends of mine asked me to house sit. So I wound up leaving Ensenada and moving north to a community called Baja Mar, which is on the ocean. It's a plant community around a golf course, very peaceful, very quiet, which is amazing in Mexico, actually.
Nice.
Normally it's quite active and can be quite noisy, but here, very quiet, very peaceful.
Nice. Wonderful. Well,
yeah.
Awesome. From Texas to Mexico, Baja, Mexico.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a lot in common in some ways because there are a lot of Mexican people in your area. So
yes. Yes. And actually, I went to school here and I did actually take 3 years of Spanish and I know nothing.
Oh.
Just
yes, sir.
I'm not good at it.
You don't remember it?
I don't. I even had a period of my life, and when I was very young, my mom had a full live-in maid for a period of time, and she was right over Mexico, right over the border, and she's full Spanish and didn't speak any English, and I still don't know. I don't know. I just blocked it out. Unfortunately, I wish I could. I could use it a lot lately because there's a lot of people here that speak both languages. So
yeah,
my fault.
I could appreciate that in Texas for sure.
Yeah.
Because Texas was once a part of Mexico, if I remember correctly.
We want us to see now, but who knows? Anyway.
Yeah. Well, today I was out with a friend, and in our previous conversations, I kept forgetting my dictionary, and we kept relying on her. She's got an iPhone.
Yeah.
And so she would look up the words in the dictionary. And today, I finally remembered to bring this.
Nice.
And the funny part was today, she forgot her cell phone. So she forgets her cell phone. I remember my dictionary, and we actually made it work.
Wonderful. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But anyway, okay. Actually, one of the things that really got my attention reading that bio of you is one of the things that you're doing is actually, it's not the same as what I'm doing, but similar because you said you want to reach 100 million women. And that got my attention when I read it, and I thought, okay, how do you plan to do that?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. One person at a time. Honestly, to be honest, the vision of that was bigger than myself. I don't necessarily have a specific plan of that. It's just being myself and getting out there and helping people one-on-one. I run a couple businesses online. One of those is a coaching program, and I only work with exclusive people and only like 4 or 5 people a year. So it's more one-on-one, but it's through the empowerment of my book and through the empowerment of being interviewed with people like you is like how to expand oneself. And I felt like when I wrote that down, like it's way bigger than I even think possible, to be honest. How at the same time, it's like, it's so bigger than me that hopefully one day maybe I will reach that. And who knows what that looks like. But honestly, my book, when I wrote the book, Sexy Boss, about the empowerment of women is changing the rule book for money, success, and sex, and how I went from bankruptcy to sexy boss. It was designed when I wrote it, November of 2013. I actually wrote it in such a way that is my story. And a lot of people in the marketing world is like, why didn't you do a big launch and make this a big thing and get to number one really fast? And I was like, that's not the point of it. I just wanted to get my story out, because I thought if one person bought it, and it was an impact on one person, then I won, and that's not the normal thinking of a marketer. And I understand that, but that was my, intention. What's interesting about that, here we're talking in 2016 right now. And a couple weeks ago, I was speaking to someone like yourself that I just met online. And she said to me, hey, congratulations on your book being top Amazon bestseller. And I said, oh, that's sweet, but it's not. And she goes, no, it is. And yes, it is. And we had this little bicker, and she goes, no, look it up. And it is now an Amazon top bestseller. So it wasn't my intention, but I feel like putting it out there and sharing your true story versus just a book to become an expert on something, I think this has a lot more, integrity around it, but also I think people appreciate it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that when I read that bit about 100 million, because I've actually been told by some of the people that I've been working with, a totally different project from what we're doing now. I have another project I'm working on, which is long-range goal, vocational thing, all that kind of stuff. But I've been getting advice from celebrities on how to become a celebrity and how to reach those millions of people. And so it's really ironic that we're here, because normally what I would be doing is asking you a whole ton of questions and, this back and forth and so on. And now I find myself in the ironic place of actually having valuable information for you that you can use.
That's great. Oh, I love that. That's wonderful. Yeah. Cool.
So it's the kind of thing that we can talk about now or later, and probably later, I think, is maybe better for it. But I wound up talking with two different celebrities. One of them is from Australia. He's one of my fans in terms of what I'm doing.
Great.
And the other one is a guy by the name of Tim Gillette. Do you know him?
I don't know Tim. Nope.
Okay. Well, I highly recommend you connect with him. He's on Blabs. You can do a search for him. So what he runs is something called the Tim Gillette Show. And I don't know how, I wanted to be on it a couple of days ago, but that's when I had my internet crash and I couldn't go on. But Tim Gillette has a physical audience of millions of listeners for his radio show. And he's all about helping people. And one day he was on, and I just remember thinking, oh yeah, Tim's on. So I just hopped onto his show, and we were talking about tech, and I gave some information. And then it suddenly dawned on me as to who I was sitting with. And I asked him, hey, Tim, I'm working on a project. This is what I want to do. Could you help me? And he said, sure, send me a direct message on Twitter. And I did. And he called me the next day, and he told me what I needed to do. So later on, I can share some of that information with you.
Great. Awesome. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah. So anyway, so the thing of getting published on Amazon is the book. How do you see the book? Is it just for empowerment, for empowering women and so on? Or is it, just how do you see it? How have you positioned it?
It's my story. It's my story of how I grew in success, and then I failed and hit a wall, and my bankruptcy, and how I went from, very successful, very short period of time to hitting a wall, and my growth and development from coming over that bankruptcy. And so what I call it is from my bankruptcy to sexy boss. And then it's just really my story about how I overcame. It's a personal story of overachieving and crashing, and then recreating myself out of the ashes, out of the phoenix, as they say. So that's what the book is about. Also a book called, From Bankruptcy to Sexy Boss. And honestly, it's a journey, because being a sexy boss to me is being sexy is about owning who you are and owning yourself on that energy, whatever that is. And so Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, chapter 7, talks about sex transmutation, and sex transmutations into the creative energy. And being sexy is being creative, and it's owning who you are. And the boss side is being willing to be responsible for all areas of your life, and knowing that you have a lot of say in the matter of going after what you want in life. So I think that for me, the book of adding those two pieces, sexy and boss, was kind of an embodiment of my journey. So that's what that book is about. And of course, I do want to empower women to be more entrepreneurial than their counterparts men, just only because men are kind of nurtured a lot more to do that than women. Women are not as much. And so I just want to empower them to say, it's okay to come out into the field and play the game of entrepreneurship. It's okay. Come on in. The water's warm. So that's the intention of the book.
Right. So I'm really curious. I mean, you talked about you had success for a period of time. Something went wrong, or maybe probably many things went wrong, and you found yourself in a place of bankruptcy and then having to rebuild. And what I'm really curious about is like what led up to the crash, number one, and then what happened afterwards that allowed you to rebuild. Because one of the things that I've encountered personally, at least, is in the process of rebuilding, it's encountering different psychological limitations or blocks. And I'm wondering if any of that was going on with you.
Oh, yeah, of course. So what happened is I was started in 2001. I started in the information marketing business and the seminars. And I spent a lot of time traveling the country doing seminars, seminar consulting. I produced over 350 events in that time period. And around 2005, I partnered up with a man, and we built a business together, and he was the face of the business, and I kind of built the whole back end of the business and the events and the products and the information side and affiliates and the JV marketing. His job was to be the face and the information. And we went from $0 to $1 million very fast in the first year. And then I went to out of town for another event, and I came back and everything was gone, right? So merchant accounts were gone and bank accounts were emptied and everything was stripped and gone. And I was locked out of the business. So I went from everything was great to literally within 24 hours, gone. So I still had a thing called a mortgage. I still had to eat, but I had put all my time into this one business, and overnight I had no income. So what happened is, of course, foreclosure hit, and then bankruptcy hit 6 months later. But through the process of getting rid of my house I just bought and going from this 4-bedroom house to literally my car and a cell phone and my dog, I really learned the lesson of being humble. But it took a couple of years on a psychological level to get through it, right? It wasn't overnight. I was not the strongest person. I definitely had a lot of victimization and why me, and I'm smarter than this, what happened, and anger, of course, towards the other person. But what I realized over a couple of years, and you're speaking to me almost 10 years later, so there's definitely been time to rebuild and to forgive and to let go. But honestly, the biggest thing that I learned was that who I am is an entrepreneur, and what I do is build. And one of the things I didn't give myself permission to do back then was to fail. I didn't give myself permission to fail. I didn't give myself permission to publicly fail, and I feel that entrepreneurs, to be able to win, you have to be willing to fail. And win and fail and win and fail, win and fail. And so like right now, we're, here in the United States, we're talking a lot about Donald Trump just because he's out there and people are hammering him over his bankruptcies. And he's just doing this because that's just part of the game. When you're a football player, they're not going to get mad at you because you got hit. It's part of the game. You get hit, then you win, then you touchdown, then you get hit, and then you get touchdown, and then you win. It's the same thing in entrepreneurship. But as entrepreneurs, we don't allow ourselves sometimes to fail. It's through the freedom of allowing ourselves to fail that you can actually really succeed. And one of my mentors, Joe Sugarman, said that to me. He said, I'm not really successful. I've just failed more than most people. Meanwhile, he's a multimillionaire, blue blocker sunglasses. And so I think it's an important piece of marketing and entrepreneurship is that you have to be willing to what I call fall on your face.
Yeah. Joe Sugarman, if I remember correctly, he's a copywriter, is he not?
He's a copywriter, direct response marketer, entrepreneur, and he's the CEO and founder of Blue Blocker Sunglasses. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Like as soon as you mentioned the sunglasses slide, right? Yes, I remember. Yeah, it's interesting that you're talking about this stuff and the recovery. It's certainly very familiar with it myself. And like in terms of the recovery, um, who did you talk to, or what devices did you use to? Because I'm willing to bet there were some limiting beliefs going on,
Oh yeah.
and I'm just wondering what did you do to overcome them?
Oh, honestly, for me, I did a couple things. The first thing I did after I got rid of my house and got in my car, I actually ended up in Marco Island, which is this tiny little island in Florida, 2 miles by 4 miles. And I spent a year there kind of doing nothing, letting go. And for a driven A-type personality like myself, that was actually really challenging to do. And I just let go a lot and just let go and focused on just the sunsets and focus on the little things in life, and got up when I got up and went to bed when I went to bed. And I didn't really try to do anything. I think that was a big piece. I didn't try really hard or get back in the circle of things in life. I just kind of laid back and allowed things to be for a minute. The second thing I did is I did surround myself. First thing I did is I eliminated a lot of people in my life. And the second thing I did is the people who I did speak to, they're very specific who I talked to, and they were mentors of mine, people that I knew, they were my fans. And actually one of my mentors said to me, quote, "Never keep anyone in my life that's not part of my fan club." That was a quote he gave me right at that time in my life. So I eliminated a lot of people in my life and only listened to mentors and people that I knew were fans of me. I had to know. And so I think at that point, you have to surround yourself with the right people. It's also very easy for people to say, "Oh, well, look, you failed. You just need to go back and get a little job, and you need to forget this whole entrepreneur thing. And why don't you just get married and get pregnant? It'll be easier. And just get married. I mean, just have a guy take care of you." I had a lot of stuff coming at me, and it was their views of it versus me. So I had to kind of eliminate more and create less for those period of years to kind of stop the noise, to stop all the chatter, so that I could actually start to listen to myself, And then one day, about a year after being in Marco Island, I kind of woke up and said, "I'm ready to build again. I'm ready to get back in the game and build. I'm ready to have that life again." And that's when I got in the car and I moved to Austin, Texas. Few reasons why. One, there's no state tax. That was one reason. Two, I'm from here. And three, Austin's an entrepreneurial city. So I wanted to surround myself with people that were building. When you come here to Austin, you're not retiring. It's not a retirement community. It's a build community. You're building something. You're creating something. You're making something happen. And so I wanted to be in that environment. I figured, okay, well, let's step into that environment and then let's see what happens. And that's the only plan I had. And that here we are, 7 years later after moving here.
Right. Now, I do want to return to something else that you said, because it is important, and I've been there myself. And you mentioned a point where you wound up living in your car, just you, and you had a cell phone.
Me, my dog, and my car.
And your dog.
Yes.
How long were you in your car?
I pretty much lived in I lived in my car for over a couple of years, but through that time I would, sleep on people's couches.
Yeah.
I had friends come on, sleep on my couch for a little bit, things like that. Sleeping in my car, like the whole night, couple nights, but not like months, because I did have friends that said, "Come on in, have a bed," but I didn't have my own place or pay rent, things like that for a while, because I couldn't. And I had dear friends that were true fans of my life that said, "Come on in, your knees are skinned, your elbows are skinned. Let's heal you up." And I had some dear friends that did that along the way. And then that's when I moved to Austin. After I moved to Austin, I was ready to okay, I want to get my own apartment again. And it sounds so little now. I mean, I have this beautiful condo. I got a brand new Lexus outside. It's great. But at the time, getting an apartment was like a big deal,
Oh, I believe that. Easy.
Getting a car payment again was a big deal. All this little stuff. It took a while to rebuild that process. It wasn't overnight. it was definitely not an overnight process. It took a while to move me from a mindset of like, I'm no longer bankrupt, it's over, to let's build something and let's create again, and fear of losing it all again. And now I'm in a place of definitely more abundant, but at the same time, that's going through my head. That there is one thing though I did learn, there's a freedom, because I don't want to go back to being bankrupt, but I did it and I was fine. So there's like this freedom to like, okay, I don't want to do it, but I'll survive, so there's like a freedom to be able to build again without that scared,
Yes.
Does that make sense? And the other thing that I learned is I had a lot of victimization going on, a lot of victimization in my mind. Because in my world at that time, like, I was smart, I'm intelligent, I went to college, I've been on my own since I was 17. Why did this happen to me? I'm smarter than this. And I had to really let go of that victimization, because it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve yourself as a business owner. It doesn't serve at all. And to let that go and say, it is what it is. And one of my mentors, Joe Sugarman, said, everything happens for the best. Everything happens for the best. Looking back 10 years later, yeah, it totally was the best. If not, I'd still be in Florida, probably still working with that guy, building his business, not mine, probably in the same house. And I wouldn't be in this great place of Austin, Texas, beautiful condo. So everything does happen for the best. But when you're in the sink of it, it doesn't always look so great,
Yeah. No, I'm very well acquainted with it, because it, like what you were talking about, happened to me too. And at one point I slept in my car for a month before I finally got off the street. And towards the end, when I finally did get some help, in my case from the government, I was in so much pain from sleeping in my car, because my car, a car, some of these cars are definitely not designed for what I was using it for, that's for sure.
Right.
And
yeah.
it really started to hurt quite a bit. And my back would be screaming in pain every morning, and this went on for a while. And I finally got off the street. But what I'm really curious about is, like, okay, you said the victimization, I get that, and that makes a lot of sense. I certainly experienced it too. What was the number one thing that allowed you to end that? And or just what's the number one thing that really stands out about how you were able to make those changes?
A couple things. Again, I had a couple mentors along the way, and coaches that helped me shift my mindset, right. And they were people in my life that I knew. They were not family. I think this is critical. They weren't family. They were coaches and mentors, like professionally. And that helped. And one of them said to me, and I'm looking to my right here, because it's literally sitting here from the moment I wrote it down on a piece of paper back in like 2007. And it said, this is what he said to me. He said, I want you to put this question to everything you do from now forward. I mean, everything you do. And this is the question. He said, does this feed my confusion or strengthen my clarity? And he said, put that to question to everything you do. That was challenging for me, because what I found myself doing is I would do what other people were doing. Oh, people are doing that. That works. Let's go that way. People are doing that. That works. Let's go that way. And I was swirling a lot, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't doing things that were going to create clarity for me and stepping stones. I was like literally swirling,
Yes,
or doing things that served other people and not me. And so I started to put that question to everything, even relationships, people in my life, friendships, family. That's a hard one. Family.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, sure. Does this feed my confusion or strengthen my clarity? And I literally now put that to everything, even today. Before I do this blab, before I did an interview, I think to myself, is it going to serve the greater good? Is it going to create clarity, or is it going to cause confusion for anyone? And I remove myself out of situations that cause confusion, because it doesn't serve anyone, So that was the first question that he put to me that started me on the path. The second one was never keep anyone in my life that's not part of my fan club. That one took me a couple months, because family, people that you think are supposed to support you aren't always supportive. Right?
No,
so
definitely not family, for sure.
It is what it is, right? That one's sometimes a little challenging. The next one, I'm again looking to my right, because they're sitting right here. is this one was like, I don't really wanted to own this one. I'm exactly in my life where I want to be. Now, when he gave me this one, I was at the bottom, and I was very angry at him. I didn't even want to write it down. I was irritated with him. I argued with him. I can see that. There is a piece of it where you have to own, this is where you're at. You know, this is where you're at. And if there's a piece of that that's very empowering, because when you're at the top too, you can own, this is where I'm at. I own this too. You know, when you're at the bottom, I own this too. When you own both and all sides in between, there's such more power you have as a person in your own mind. But that one was challenging, sitting there with nothing, $10 literally that I had to my name, and going, this is no, I didn't make this, you know. You did. So,
yeah, it's true.
So that was the beginning of the shift.
Yeah, that's good. It's interesting that you mentioned $10 because a while ago I wrote a book. I haven't published it yet. I was just getting ready to publish it, and then I had a medical emergency. I had to drop everything. But the book is called The $12 Recoil, and I'm sure you can guess what the $12 is about. But basically, when I got off the street, that's all I had left in my pocket. It's all I had in the world. It was that $12. So
yeah, I mean, my dad and I went to my dad's house for a couple weeks, and he was my last resort, you know, never went back to my home, and here I am. And yeah, we had a big fight basically about some stuff, and he kicked me out, and I actually haven't seen him since, and he gave me $10, and that was all I had. That was it, you know. Wow. And I thought to myself, now I've really hit bottom. You know, my own family's kicked me out, and I got $10, and how do I go from here? And that was when my mentor, Richard Flint, said this to me. And I thought, I don't know about that, you know? So I've come a long way, and I don't want to get all negative, but I would say this is that no matter what the situation is you're going through, it could be divorce, it could be whatever, it could be something on a personal, physical level, you know, there is a piece of that you have to own where you're at. And when you own where you're at, positive or negative, there's just so much more freedom to be able to change or alter where you're at and make a new decision and make a new view and then make a new choice. And another quote, again, where I'm looking over here to my right, is another one he gave me was, never stay where your presence is not valued.
Yes, very important. Extremely important. Yeah, that's a really good teaching.
It's a really good teaching because now for me, I don't know about you, but for me, I was, what do I call it? Like a high schooler following people around. You know, doesn't mean that my presence was valued and they were valued with me. It wasn't a value exchange. It was just like kind of like a puppy love or puppy following. And it wasn't until I started to value me and start to say, I'm going to add value to you, that you can value me, like the other person on the side of the table. And it wasn't until that I don't go where I know that I'm not valued or I don't value them. And there's just so much clarity. The people you're around, friendships, relationships, family, invitations, parties that you can say, that I can say no to with complete integrity. You know, it's kind of fun.
No, this is really good. I mean, I very much like what you're talking about because I recently went through a situation along the lines of what you're talking about. I was living in a place where, you know, I was paying rent, but it was very obvious to me that I wasn't appreciated by my landlord except for the money that he could get from me, but he wouldn't give me services that I paid for. And there were some major problems where I was living. And then roughly 3 weeks ago, is that my friends told me, oh, you know, these are friends that I recently, it's kind of a convoluted story. The woman is someone I met a few years ago on a dating site. We didn't get along so well. Later on, she met somebody else also from that site. They got along really well. They got married. And then they came here about maybe 4 months ago, and I met him for the first time. And all of the baggage that was there from before completely vanished, and we became really good friends, all three of us. So recently, they said we're going on a trip, and they knew about my problems with where I was living. And my friend was saying, would you like to house it? And I said, sure, even though I knew it was only going to be 2 weeks and I'd have to move and might have to sleep in my car again for a while until I got paid and could move to my new place. The weird part about it, and it was just a leap of faith, and I was here only 1 week, and she sent me an email and said, oh, well, we've decided to extend our trip. How would you feel about staying until early April? So, but the whole point of the story outside of that, being able to stay here longer, is what you said about being valued.
Yeah.
And it's very clear to me with my friends that they value me, that they really like me, and they enjoy having me around, and vice versa, as opposed to where I was, which was definitely not good. So it's a really important point that you make for another reason, and it has to do with boundaries, which you've obviously learned. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think boundaries come from when you're valued with yourself. When you start to be valuing with who you are and what you want to create, boundaries kind of automatically happen. And the reason I say that is because I think there's a period in my life that I was reading about boundaries and how to create boundaries, and some self-help book years ago, and it never really worked. I was like, I'm creating a boundary here. And it was kind of weird. Like, it felt odd, and now there is boundaries. I have boundaries only because I'm just so clear on what I want now. I'm clear where I'm going. I'm clear what I want. And when anyone tries to hit that wall, I just oh, well, you're wrong. You're going the wrong way. And I think that's a huge piece, as a sexy boss and as an entrepreneur, myself, and as a coach, you have to be able to, what I call, control your own schedule and control your time, because the only thing you have is time, right? The only thing I have is time to add value and time to create something, time to have a skill set. And I just, honestly, I just love what I do. And I think that also helps with adding value. And when you add value, then other people see that value, like you're adding value right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, agreed. And I mean, a big part of this whole thing and how to make it successful and so other people benefit, what I've learned over the years interviewing is really listening to what the other person's saying and feeding questions back, or just saying, you said something really interesting here. Can we touch on this? And so moving forward with that and what you're doing now and working with women, and when you sit down with someone for the first time, how do you structure your work with them? Like, what's the number one thing that you do?
Repeat that last part because Blab just blurted out. So number one thing I do
when you wind up working with either one person or a group, and obviously you have a structure that you have in place, but what I want to know is, what is the number one thing you do when you sit down with either one person or a group of people?
The first thing I do, and this is just so important, is the first thing that I had to do was create clarity for themselves. Where are they going? And it sounds like a simple question, but you'd be surprised how many times people don't know. They create chaos in their lives, or they have all these different directions they're going, or they want to create all these different things. And what happens is they're not creating anything. I just had a phone call with a particular gentleman that, he's been working on a project for 15 years. Wow. There isn't anything that's happening. He's had conversations about the project for 15 years. And I thought to myself, I asked him, when are you going to help somebody in your life that's going to hold you accountable to actually have that happen? And let's get clear on one thing, not 15. And so the first thing I work with anybody on is, what are you doing? What's that clarity? Is that question does this feed your confusion or strengthen your clarity? Sometimes you can't even answer that question because you don't even know what your clarity is. You're just kind of wallowing. And the action I tell them they're not allowed to do, if they're working with me, they're not allowed to do for 6 weeks, is they're not allowed to buy any kind of information product. Nothing. And the reason is because sometimes someone else's product or coaching will cause more confusion, and so if I'm working with them one-on-one specifically, I'm like, let's focus on what you want, focus on what you want to create so that we can begin to work on that step by step. And what's going to happen is, as you talked earlier, what's going to happen is your stuff, your mindset, your head trash is going to come in the way. So I feel like I'm an expert in two things. I'm an expert in marketing and business, like the marketing and structure of getting the message out to the universe such that you're making an ROI. That's the first thing. The second thing is the human trash in your head that stops you from getting your message out to the marketplace. Those are the two things. Those are the two things that I feel I'm an expert in, and those are the two things I add value to my client.
Yeah. Okay. Because is the next thing that keeps coming to mind is like, what kinds of questions do you ask them when you sit down with them to help them get that clarity? Like, do you have a checklist or something of that nature that you use, or do you just wind up talking with them and interviewing them to find out what's going on?
Yeah, I interview them. You'd be surprised when you actually, like you said, listen, and you really give people the space to just say what they want to say. You'll start to hear, as a coach, that's what I feel like I'm trained to do is I'll hear their story, what I call their swirling. You'll hear the swirling. So I just work with them to have them see their clarity of what they want. I help them because I can't give them the answer. I think as a good coach is someone that doesn't give them the answer. They help them see what they're doing, if that makes sense. Because left to our own devices as human beings, we're bad. We'll procrastinate. We don't do what we say we're going to do. Left to our own devices, that's just kind of what we do. And that is why we have teachers and coaches and people like that, bosses, as some people do, because we have sometimes to have somebody else help us hold us account. But as entrepreneurs, we have to create that structure. I have a coach. I've had a coach now for almost 15 years. This particular coach for almost 6 years. I've always had a coach in my life, mainly because I learned through that process of the bankruptcy and all that left to my own devices, like I'm really bad to myself. Left to my own head space and head trash, I'm really like mean to myself on a lot of levels. So I had to get someone outside of myself and allow myself to have that coaching support. And it's been very phenomenal because I think that's that's helped me go so far, so fast, as I've had that third party. So now I offer that to other people. But that's what I do is I really ask them, what are you doing? What do you want? And then they'll like spin, you know, I think I want that. And I think I want this, and spin. So just helping them get clear on what that is and then deciding, okay, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So there's an accountability component of what you do, I'm sure. A little or a lot?
Yes. Huge accountability, but more about helping them create clarity, accountability for themselves. But the biggest one, I think my knack as a coach and as a business coach and marketing coach is helping others get really, really clear on their message and get really clear on where they're going. And it sounds so simple, but it's one of the hardest things. And the reason why I think it's the hardest thing is not only because we have our head trash, but also because we're in an era that we're being inundated, like social media, do this. And so you're constantly inundated and it's hard for you to think. So I really work with them on getting really super, super, super clear on their message, their market, where they're going, and sticking with that.
Right. So in terms of the clients that you have, or the clients you want to attract, what kind of clients are you looking for? What are you looking for people?
Great question. Yeah, so I only work with a couple people a year because I have 5 other online businesses, that are my income, right? So, and what I work with is people that they could either be an entrepreneur or they're working in a corporate world. It doesn't really matter because I work with the person and where they're going. And I usually work, my clients now are owners of companies between 1 to 4 million. That's like the gate right there. And I'm helping them go to like the next level. So that's what I do. I work with their marketing, their message, their business sense. What are they doing? The clarity of that, working with them on the solidness. And then I'm working with their human beingness of how they become more effective with their message and market. How do they really get what they want more quickly?
Right. So for people who want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do it?
HeatherHavenwood.com. And if you're interested in having a conversation, just seeing if working with me works, it's definitely it's a two-way street in a coaching relationship. You can go to work with Heather in the top right-hand side and get on a call with me. We can have a conversation. But honestly, the coach and hiring a coach and it's like a personal decision. I think it's even stronger than dating relationships, because a coach is someone that you entrust with your with what your goals are and your life choices are, and you really entrust them with those choices that impact their lives. And I know that when I work with somebody, like, I know that the choices that we make on the call and they make will affect their life. It will affect their family. Yes. It will affect their children. I mean, that's a very serious thing I take. Yeah. I don't take that lightly at all at any level. I think the word coach is flown around a lot. I don't think it's sometimes true to its word. So I take the approach of being very specific on my clients, being selective, and people that really actually want to make a huge change in their life at a fast rate. So HeatherHavenwood.com.
Perfect. All right. So for all of you who have been listening, my name is Nathan Segal of the Legends of Online Marketing. My guest today has been Heather Havenwood, and I want to thank you for joining me. And thank you very much for answering my questions. It's been quite the journey.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for asking them. Thank you for listening. And I think it's a great point as Legends of Marketing. I don't think it's called, really Legends of Marketing could be the journey of marketing, because it's really a journey. I'm constantly learning, it's a constant learning lesson. So thank you for this opportunity, but more importantly, thank you for bringing this to the world. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're most welcome.